Brand Retro Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Brevick, and in every episode, our goal is to get you thinking differently about your marketing and your brand, and to help you avoid the trap of thinking small. The Brand Retro mindset is all about remembering those moments when you initially created and fell in love with your brand, all while applying these feelings and that authenticity back into the process of where you're at today. You don't have to be $1 million brand or spend $1 million to look like $1 million brand. All right, Chris, welcome to the podcast. I'm going to shift gears on you just for a second because it seems like the right time to slip this in. One of the things I wanted to do with my business, starting probably 2.5 years ago, is I wanted to start to work for and do the kind of work that kind of filled my cup. So we talked a little bit before about, how you get jazzed out about, the old toys, cartoons, the retro stuff, whatever. And I'm like, well, how can I find clients that, like, I just want to do stuff like that where I get excited about the work.
Right.
And nothing against the regular clients, but I don't get that excited about some of my clients because they're doing good work, but it's
I get it.
as fun for me. So
I get it.
I brought in this art comic idea, and I'm like, I just wonder if there's people out there that need help, and what can I do to help them? Because like I have two really good friends that are more into comics than I am. I like to think I'm into them, but they're way more in it than I am. Like they can argue the factoids of who got what. Like, they can go for days, and I'm like, I don't know how you know all that stuff. But anyway,
but I'll lose street cred. But I don't know like what happened in Spidey 193. Like I don't know.
Yeah, like there's certain things I remember, but it's big stuff, right? General knowledge stuff,
right.
But to your point, they'll get in the weeds on every little detail and then argue whether or not it was Spidey 191 versus 187. And I'm like,
right.
Does it really matter? Anyway, I started hitting some cons with them, and that's where I started to see more of this creator side and these people that set up their booths and they brought their art and they've got the backdrops and they're trying to make it.
Yeah.
And I'd walk up and down these aisles, and this is probably 3-4 years in a row. I looked at these people and thought, are you making it? How hard is this?
Yeah.
Like, and I knew, like, I could tell some of them were hungry. Like, they're like, I'm going to figure this out. And there's other ones I think that maybe have a full-time job and they're only doing it on the weekends or whatever it is.
Right.
But that kind of got my wheels turning on how can I help these guys out? Because not to be critical, but like I'd go up and down these aisles and I'm like, that guy's a heck of an artist, but his marketing's horrible. And that guy, like I could just tell there's a little disjointed nature in the way they were marketing themselves, and not to criticize them for it because they don't know, and that's not their world anyway. But I saw it as an opportunity to walk through there and think, I wonder if I can do something here. I wonder if I can mesh these two concepts together and help these guys. So that's kind of where it came from.
Well, it's a weird thing. Like even when we spoke about it, I didn't have the first idea what I wanted my site to look like. I didn't know. Thankfully, with my retail background, before I was able to go full time with this, I kind of knew how to set up a table. I knew how to merchandise. I'll be honest. When I go to a show, and I knew when I first got back in that I was not going to make a ton of money. And it was going to take doing 35, 40 shows a year to really sort of break even.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting my table paid for. I wasn't getting the hotel. I wasn't getting travel. I wasn't, you walk into a show sometimes $1,500 in the hole if you're not doing pre-show commissions. You're up against it. But I knew that I had to attack the con in a sense. Like I didn't want to like attack people as they were walking past, but I wanted to engage.
Yeah.
And a lot of artists are introverts. So it's a difficult thing for some artists to not only be the creator, but also be the salesperson. That's hard. It's hard to market yourself because you're so like, I always say this. I said this to you. We're the most confident, insecure people you'll ever meet. because like we'll have our stuff on the table and you think it's the greatest stuff. Otherwise, you wouldn't show it. And then somebody walks up, and then you're really nervous while they're looking at it because what if they hate it? And then they walk away, and you're like, well, why didn't you buy it? It's all awesome. Like,
Right, right,
you can't have that. It's hard to balance it. It's hard to believe in yourself enough to engage, and then not, and then at least be able to hide the cringe while somebody's looking at your book.
right.
It's you could walk through an artist alley at any comic convention and see people who are incredibly talented, and then they say they didn't do good at the show, and it's because they don't know, or they haven't learned, or they aren't comfortable enough with the fact that they are now selling their art. This is their soul on the paper. This is the thing they do when nobody's looking. Everybody says they can't make it, and this and that. This is like this is everything, and now they have to let it go and hope that somebody else likes it. That's a hard thing to be good at.
Yeah, and that's it's funny you say that because that was one of the big things I picked up on as I was kind of brainstorming how to approach this was how do I give these people more confidence in what they're doing and how do I give them a sale after the sale type toolbox because like you said if they're introverted and they're not a salesperson the chances of them botching the sale are pretty high
Right.
but how do you position them to not have to work so hard on that part of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like, well, what if I could give them more tools? And what tools would those be? It would be a website. It would be because I experience I have experienced it many times when I go to these shows and you try to break the ice and kind of shoot the breeze with some of these people,
Mhm.
and they're just like, I just don't. I'm not a big talker, and it's like, they just
Terrified. It's terrifying. I got to tell you, man. Like, and rightfully so, because there's some giants in this industry. Sometimes you really got to convince yourself that you belong in the room.
yeah,
Because there are people. I own their books. And now I'm sitting like three tables away from them, and they're kicking my ass because they're like, doing money hand over fist and commission on that, and I'm loving it. If I had it, I'd get a commission from them too. I've done it sometimes, but it's a very difficult thing to acknowledge that you belong in the room. You have to, if the only way you can make it, in my opinion, is to know that you belong.
right.
And once you own where your spot again is in the industry, then you can start sort of feeling comfortable enough to say, yeah, well, I don't draw like so and so, or I don't have the resume of so and so, but this is what I did, and they couldn't do this either. This is my thing.
Right.
You do that, then hopefully, you can make the money.
I mean, we've only done, I believe you're our third one, so we're going to continue to do them. But
Right.
I'm hoping that we can continue to provide the tools in the toolbox, but provide a tool in the toolbox that gives them the confidence to
Yeah.
sell differently, to take on a little bit more of a commerce mindset. Because I agree with you, it's hard to sell your art because it's so subjective and
Right.
like you said you're good to a point but then at the same time you're like everybody's good when you start
Yeah. Yes. It's intimidating. I like having the site. I have to be honest. I really like having the site because you know the last couple of months when I've opened up commissions, it's nice to just have the prices broken down right there and not it kind of the site is really the middleman.
right
You
and
know,
that's the beauty of having
it's
that
perfect.
tool in the toolbox is the site gets to be the bad guy, the site gets to be the negotiator, the
Yeah.
site gets to be, and I don't know if I've even mentioned this to you, but what I like, this is just my opinion, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But what I like about the site is that it elevates you as the brand and not the artist. You're not the artist you're not this just this guy anymore.
Yeah.
You're this brand. You're Chris Campana art. You just
Yeah.
got a promotion. It's
Perception's reality.
yeah, it is. And that's what I liked about it is that, when I've followed your art and I looked at different things, I'm like, this guy's too good. We got to give him a crown. We got to somehow elevate him in this process because like you said, perception's reality.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden the negotiation process is different. The sales process
Yeah.
is different. And for somebody who can't think through like, well, I don't know what I'd get if I did get a commission. Well, then just go to the gallery and see if there's something there you like. And
Yeah.
it's hard not to like some of it. So it's like it's easy now for these people to get there. But
Yeah, it's been really it's been helpful, and like I said, I sent it to a bunch of people who like my one buddy is I guess is he considered like a webmaster? Like is that
oh,
still a thing?
it is, yep.
Yes. But he works for a major company in PA, and he's like, man, that's a really clean looking site. Like that is just it's everything you would want it to be. And he's kind of sort of like I would bounce that kind of stuff off, and it's just it's I have to tell you it's really cool over the day to get an email that somebody placed an order, and I didn't even do anything. Well, I did something because they found something on the site they liked, but I not that I don't want to interact with them, but I didn't have to interact with them. Like it just happened. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was up for there was this award ceremony thing going on, and but when I logged into the interview thing, they were like, "Oh, Chris, you don't have like a comic like database thing with all your work and stuff like that." And I was like, "Oh, well, just go here," because this is where it all really is.
Right.
And I haven't had that to that degree, so it's extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, I don't again, I don't know how much of the backstory I've shared with you, but like when we started your site, my number one goal is that I wanted to provide you a platform to hopefully get you that Moon Knight gig, get you Spidey. Like I just want to see that happen.
Right?
Not that you won't do it all on your own, but
No, I don't think.
I would love for the tool in that toolbox to help you get there. The other thing is that when we started working on it, when I started working with the artists, to your point on the clean design, I didn't want it to get like because as web artists and graphic artists, everybody wants to get crazy. And I'm like, but what we create digitally can't outshine the art because the art's the point.
Right.
Like we're not trying to win a web design award here. We're trying to showcase the art. That's what's important. So that was, the message internally when we started building it is like we needed it to look awesome, but we didn't want it to outshine the guy behind it because that's the point. That's why we're doing it. And then yeah, well, I mean, there's so much web stuff. I mean, we could have done so many other things, but it's like I didn't want to outshine the purpose of it. And then the last thing is passive income. Like when we started talking about the e-commerce portion of it, I was working with one of my designers on it, and he's like, well, does he plan to do this? Does he plan? And I'm like, don't overthink it. Like, he's going to supply and fulfill and get as much stuff out there as he can over time.
Right.
But the idea is passive income. If he can get that generating whatever, $100 a month, it's $100 a month he didn't have before. That's the point. So passive income, that's what we want to do. And it was fun for me to take this raw art mindset and try to manipulate it into a e-commerce machine. So I had a blast working on your site just because it let me exercise both sides of the brain on it, which is cool.
I was lost. Like I didn't know what to do. I was just like, man, can I just send some stuff? Like, cause I don't.
Well,
The only thing I kept thinking about every time I was thinking about the site was I wanted to look like it's set up at a show. That's what I wanted. I wanted you to feel like you were standing at my table, for lack of a better term. I wanted it to be as close as we could get to interacting as we could, and hope that people went to like the next tab
right.
without me
And,
saying, "Good, do you want to see this?"
I think we're almost there, but the one part I want to see happen when shows start to come back is I want to get that hashtag thing dropped in there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you remember, that's where you can basically do your own hashtag and you can do live kind of almost feeds and
yeah.
streams right from the show, which I think is going to be super cool for fans.
I want to do that. That stuff. Well, again, that's kind of how I've built the base, is because I've been the guy you got the mixtape from, and now working on stuff. And it's like I remember when. I'm always going to be that. It's weird, like you said before about hoping to get the Moon Knight or the Spidey, and of course, I mean, well, who wouldn't want that? But at the same time, again, I don't really. That's not my benchmark anymore. But I always find it strange, when you're online and people are like, man, how come you're not working for like one of the big two? I don't know because there's a ton of great artists who are. And like I don't have an answer. And it used to back in the day, I was like, yeah, this is you're right, and I like shake my fist to the heavens. But now it's, I've spoken with them. They like the stuff. If something happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. But to have the site and to have everything else, I'm good with it.
It's all, who's looking at what time, because I can go to any book now and I can find 10 artists that I don't like. And
Sure,
I'm surprised that I'm like, really? How'd they get, but somebody liked them.
it happens.
Yep. Somebody liked them, or they were different enough, or maybe it's just not my taste, whatever it is, but it's interesting. Cause I've done the same thing. I've looked at your work and I'm like, he's just as good as X, Y, and Z all day long. But, like we said, you got to catch the right time and the right person, but
Yeah,
it'll happen.
yeah. But by the same token, if it doesn't, man, like this, like it's okay.
Yeah.
It's totally okay
Yeah.
because I've got 2 books coming out in 21. I've got another book, that I will kickstart probably at some point, because I've got fans of a couple of the creator-owned things that I'm doing,
Yep.
and that's cool. I'm telling you, man, it's just so cool to wake up and on most days there's some kind of message or email about a gig or about somebody requesting something. It's just that is the coolest thing. It's just, I mean, even in on a crazy year like this,
Yeah.
now granted, of course everybody has lost income in any industry you're in. Most industries, you've taken a hit, and with shows, that's a big part of my income. But somehow, because of everybody who supports the gig, we're doing all right. That's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, I've had many people ask me about, how COVID affect you this year. And I think they're looking for some kind of a drawn out, kind of a sad story. And it's like, I really can't complain. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm not experiencing anything different than anybody else. Yes, I've probably dipped some sales and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I'm still doing it. Still surviving. I'm still making it. I'm pretty content.
yeah.
Next year, we'll see what happens next year. But
It kind of actually fortified some stuff for me, because the bottom did kind of drop out.
yeah, well, it tested you, right? Because I had the same thing where I kind of had to go back to formula and think, okay, do I still
Yeah,
got this? Do I still got the grind? I still got the
yeah,
drive? And, here I am 10 months later and still doing it. So I think I can sustain. I think I'm okay, but
yeah,
it humbled you, it knocked you back a peg or two and you had to rethink it and
yeah.
still doing it.
I
So,
panicked. I totally panicked.
oh, yeah, nobody knew what was going to happen,
Right.
right? So,
Terrified for a little bit, but then I just, I think the thing about the no plan B thing is because you trust, we've talked about this, you trust your plan A.
yeah.
And you trust the fact that your plan A may in fact change and evolve in a sense, but if you trust yourself within that plan A, it'll work.
I don't know if this is my quote or if I got this from somewhere, but it's hard to be all in if you're not all in.
100%.
If you're, if you still got your training wheels on, you're really not doing it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned it to somebody the other day. I was like, I was like, you keep treating it like a hobby. That's all it's going to be. It's not a hobby. This even when you're not getting paid for it. This is your job.
yeah,
And until you treat it like your job, who else is going to treat it like it's your job?
I know a lot of people think that, what we do, and especially what you do, is fun because you just get up and draw pictures all day. And it's like, it's not really
No,
like there are days that I don't want to do it,
not at
but,
all.
but, but you have to. You understand that like it's a grind and you muscle through it. And at the end of the day, you probably feel pretty accomplished, but
Right.
just because it's a cool industry doesn't make it fun every day.
How many times, and people listening to this will probably agree with this. How many times have you been following an artist on social media and they'll say decided to draw for fun today? All the time because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They drew.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant like for the work side of it, because
No, no, man, no, no, no. The fun days are when you're not doing that stuff.
right. I was just gonna say, well,
Yeah,
the funnest days that I have are the days that I'm not when I'm not doing what I should be doing, basically.
100%. Like I see so many artists who are like
Mm.
super fun today, got to go back to work tomorrow, and the people be like, "Wait a second, don't you draw every day?" It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I have
Yeah.
my list of commissions, and again, thankful for all the commissions and everything. But I'd be lying if I said I was looking forward to them all the same.
Right.
Like I'm looking at the five that I plan on doing tomorrow, and I know that if I do one of them before the other, I won't get to the other because
Right.
I'm so destroyed by the fact that I had to do that one. It's just going to ruin the whole. I'll take the longest lunch ever after that. I won't do the other one.
Right.
You gotta. I got to make the right decisions tomorrow when I do these. I got four done today, but these I was already putting a couple of these off. Yeah.
Like everybody's got, no matter what industry you're in, you've always got that stuff that you
Oh
back
yeah.
burner. Yeah.
If I was an accountant, I'm sure I wouldn't want to work with some numbers and stuff like that. I did everything. I mean, there's fun stuff and there's not fun stuff. It's work. It's a job.
Right. So what's on the docket next? What are you working on now for the remainder of the year and into 2021?
So Parker 2 is behind me.
Yep.
I've got 5 pages left. Then I'm gonna finish up. That'll ship in January because with shows being taken away, everybody working on the book had to take other gigs, more gigs. So it kind of slowed production down because this isn't a paying gig. You know,
Right. Right.
we got the coloring book that comes along with Parker 2. I just did some character designs for a book called Blind Justice, which is slated for next year. And I have something that I'm really excited about. I can't say anything about it. It's not for the big two, but it is for a publisher. And it was the coolest thing because me and the writer went back and forth over like 23 emails in an hour and developed this entire storyline. It was like the coolest, like just riffing on something sort of thing.
Yep.
And I can't wait to work on that. But that's next year. This year really is finishing Parker, um, cleaning off the list, and honestly, probably taking just a couple of weeks to take a break from the hustle.
Yeah.
Just
Kinda
take
re-
a breather. Because sometimes I think as artists we hustle so hard to continue to make it that you kind of get blind to deficiencies in your work because you're just trying to you're going, and all of a sudden you look up, you're like, man, I haven't I haven't learned anything. I'm working so hard to get through that my work is suffering, and I've been doing it long enough now where I can kind of catch myself, and I take a breather for that day or whatever. But I I haven't taken a break in a couple of years. I take a little like, small little break and then I'll get back on it.
right.
So
So what's the favorite thing you've done? Like what project? Is it Chosen? Is it Parker? Is it First World? Like what's your favorite?
creator owned.
Yeah.
First World has a special spot with me because I have people who still ask me when the next issue is coming out, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Chosen, which I'll be packaging with First World next year as like a sword and sorcery anthology book. We'll do two separate stories. That'll be the Kickstarter. Chosen is if I was better at doing what I'm doing when I started First World. Does that make sense? Like Chosen is everything I've learned from First World.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I'll look back at first. I'm like, man, the hell was I doing in these first four issues? Like,
Right.
they're good in spots, but I remember like there's one part of First World where like they didn't move for like an issue and a half from this one spot. Like, what was I writing? So Chosen is I learned my lesson, and here's another sword and sorcery book that kind of. But Parker, because of the circumstances, because of everything, and because of the impact it has on other people, that was not at all the focus, to have this impact on anyone else. That I think speaks to what art can do. And I'm not trying to sound egotistical by saying that. It's not an egotistical statement. I hope it doesn't come across as that. But I'm proud of Parker for reasons that go beyond art. There's something to be said about part one and part two. There won't be a part three, but there's just something about creating something that kind of transcends just the medium. And
Right.
those aren't my words. Things people said, and I look at them like, wow, that's. I don't want it to sound like it's my ego talking because it's not. It's just the conversations that I've had with people, and that people have felt compelled to say certain things to me, whether it's in person, through messenger, email, whatever. I could never do a book more important than Parker 1 and 2. I just don't think I don't think it's possible. And I hope I never have the circumstances to have to,
Right.
but I mean, there I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but there's a couple that came to me in Toronto and was like, "You saved our entire marriage. Like you saved that book saved us." And again, not the intention. And I had to make sure that when I made Parker 2, I still only did it for myself because I had everybody ringing in my head. And I was getting caught up in the whole, oh, you got to make this book. Everybody's waiting, and then I had to stop and say, you can't. That's not why you're making the book. You have to. This is why you're making it, and you have to quiet those voices about what people are waiting for. But it's hard not to be very very thankful out of the worst circumstances in the world to have touched people's lives and to make them feel not better, because I don't think you can feel better, but some kind of understanding or relief
Yeah.
of a circumstance that no one will want to deal with in their life. That makes sense?
Yeah. I think it's the be all end all of passion projects. I mean, a lot of people claim to have passion projects, but like when I read Parker 1, I was like, this is like, there's so much going on here that it's just a phenomenal piece of work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I read it again the other day. I hadn't looked at it in months. And I was like, man, the art's not nearly as bad as I thought it was. Like, I hate it. There's so many reasons I hated the art. I was like, all right, you could have done a few things different here and there, but at the moment you were doing it, this is where you were. But I tried to run from it for the past couple of years, or the past year and a half. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to this and that. But I think uh, to not acknowledge it and to not understand what it is would be a disservice to why it was made.
yeah.
You know, so it's I'll never be more proud of something than those books.
Well, I think it's phenomenal. And I was excited when we did your website that we included a space for that to kind of
Yeah.
expand that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I certainly didn't want it to get dusted over because I think it's a great piece of work. So
Thanks, man.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think my last question is I'm just gonna go to the geek side a little bit. I know we've
Okay.
talked Masters of the Universe. What's your favorite genre? What's your favorite title? What's your favorite artist? What kind of stuff are you looking at on a day-to-day basis?
So, I mean, Masters of the Universe is like everything to me. But not the cartoon, the original mini comics. I that cartoon did not age well, but obviously it still impacted my childhood. Sword and sorcery stuff. I think there's so many things you can do with that genre. Even though there's obviously a million things that already have been done with, which is why Chosen is about not being chosen, and all those kind of things. But I can't get away from that genre, and I can't get away from like if I'm struggling at any point with art, I just take a minute and I look at Frank Frazetta, and I'm able to remember why I'm hating myself for the 6 hours before something actually happened on me in front of the page, on the page.
Yeah.
It's it's something I can't fully explain. I Even now, like I find myself collecting the old figures,
Yeah.
and watching like reviews on new figures that are coming out, and toy hunting and all this stuff that I do now to find enjoyment. And something happened. We talked about this at the beginning. Something happened with however they marketed or the brand or whatever it was. But when I got that first Man at Arms figure when I was 8 years old, I'm 46. And man, if I don't lose my shit when I see a Man at Arms figure, like it's the same exact thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
So I guess that
they were they were so epic.
I know.
I mean, I just as a kid, I'm like, what is going on here? Like
I know.
they don't have toys like that anymore, you know? And
I know. That's why I
I
went out
mean,
and bought the new ones that just came out last month
yep.
because I can't help myself.
Yeah, they're fantastic, and I absolutely I didn't know it as a kid because I wasn't that aware, but now looking back at it, I love the way that they meshed all these mediums to tell the story when they were doing the mini comic, and then they had like the epic art on the packaging. Like, who painted all that stuff? Like, I'm sure I could dig it up, but like those
Well,
artists are phenomenal.
you gotta watch the documentaries on Netflix about him, man, because I know there was one of them where they said they wanted Frazetta, but he was too expensive, so they found like Earl Norham, and I think Mark Taylor did like the initial designs for like masters and stuff like that. But if you watch some of the documentaries, they had no plans of really doing the mini comics. They had no plans of doing the cartoon, and they're in like these production meetings or trying like these vendor meetings, and they're like, well, how do you plan on marketing this? Oh, well, they're all coming with comic books. It's like, oh, they are like,
Yeah,
and that's how you look at some of those mini comics, and they don't even the characters don't resemble what came out because it was on all this early production art, so they didn't have any idea what they were doing. It was honestly like when you watch it, they are the epitome of faking it till you make it.
oh yeah, they were completely making it up as they went along.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, even they talk about Battle Cat, how they took it from some other toy
Big
line and
Jim.
just painted it green, and they're like, "I don't know." Well,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, wow.
there's there's that great line in that documentary where the guy's like, Merman was going to be called Seaman.
Yeah, right.
He didn't see the problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that the Toys That Made Us? Is
I
that
think
the
I think that one's the toys that made it. But there's also like the Powers of Grayskull or something like that is this other documentary, and it's just like you're watching these, and I mean them Thundercats and some other stuff. It's just your entire childhood right in front of you, and that's the thing about that what I get to do now is because I catered a lot of my like fan art to those kinds of things. Those are most of the fans, like-minded people that follow me. So I can't remember when it was. It was a couple weeks ago. I was like dreading going to work the next day. I was like, shit, you got your Skeletor tomorrow. What are you dreading? Like you're you're literally getting paid to draw a Skeletor tomorrow. Just buck up. Like this is what you're doing. So I always say my 10-year-old self would be pissed at me if I really complained about my gig.
right. Your 10-year-old self probably wouldn't have believed you. He'd be like, "What?" Yeah.
Well, my 10-year-old self was getting kicked by everybody else who was an adult saying you'll never make it anyways.
Right, right.
It was that.
How about any, comic titles? Do you read anything religiously, Spidey or
So maybe I'll lose some cred here, but I'm not reading a bunch of books. I pick up the books most of the time for the art.
Yeah.
I want to see what a lot of these artists are doing because I always want to learn, and I always want to see different ways to approach. One thing I'll do is I'll take like Dan Mora right now. Dan Mora is out of control. He is. I should have it around here. He's working on he's working on something working on Batman now too, but he's doing Power Ranger stuff. But he also does Once and Future for Boom, and he's the artist on that book. And his stuff is it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like I can't get enough of the dude's work. And just what I'll do sometimes is I'll look at the page and I'll imagine if like the script was given to me, and I'll just try to attack it differently, sequentially, like how I would do the layout and the acting and everything on the page. And he's always on. Like I'm sure he doesn't think that, and I'm sure he would say, "Well, I could have done this or I could have done that," but that's what every artist would do.
Right.
But right now, between him and Otley is always going to be somebody that I just look at and I'm just amazed. So I'm not reading them, although I do read Once and Future. I'm not reading them as much as I'm looking at them and then the words, not to insult writers because I'm a writer too, but it's weird. Like the words are almost secondary to me when I pick up a comic book.
No, I'm the same way. I have some that, I will read them from time to time, but sometimes I just buy them for the art
Yeah.
just because I have tons that I've never even read because I'm just like, I don't know, I just haven't read it. But I've flipped through it and I've
You
looked at
look
the
through it,
art and yeah.
Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
the same way. If there's a good artist, like, I mean, I think it was Nick Spencer's writing Spidey, and he writes a great Pete. Like his Peter is really well done. But if there was an issue here or there where like Ryan wasn't drawing it, I wasn't as compelled to pick it up
Right.
because it didn't. I mean, I did, but it wasn't the same.
Right.
Not an insult to those artists; they just don't speak to me the way his does.
Yeah, like I'm a huge Neil Adams guy, and
Right.
if I ever go to cons or whatever, I'm always looking for the Neil Adams stuff because the guy can't. I don't know if he makes mistakes. I mean, he's just so on. Like his artwork is phenomenal.
He's doing mystery
But
boxes right now.
is he really?
Yeah, I think they're $300 mystery box. I think you get like a head sketch, some signed books, some prints, and some other stuff. But I've met Neil a few times. Always been very, very nice to me. Always been, you can catch anybody on a bad day, but he's always been gracious and good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, been a,
I just think it's phenomenal. Not only his artwork, but what he was able to do with the artwork and the color pops back in the day when printing was a lot different. Like right now with the certain brightness of paper, the inks, nothing against the current artist, but he did it with a lesser product. And I'm like, how did he do that? Like they must have had some phenomenal printing companies that were knocking that stuff out for these guys.
a lot of the old school artists, whether it was the pencil or the inker or the colorist, they were really formally trained
Yeah.
draftsmen. Like they didn't just come in there just drawing comics. I mean, they were trained and they knew how to do a lot of stuff that maybe you know some of the artists now maybe don't do as well or whatever. But they were. There's a reason why you're talking about somebody who started out so long ago, who's still considered on top of his game right now, and still can go to a show and have this massive booth and make a living doing this because talent
Yeah.
sustains.
Yeah.
That's what it is. There's in any industry, you might have somebody who was big for a couple of years, but they can't sustain, or again the cream rises or whatever. But a lot of those artists from back in the day, you'd be hard pressed to find people better. It's just different,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something, especially with like the Neil Adams or some of these guys that have been around a while, there's some nostalgia too that's now starting to circle back
Mhm.
and makes their stuff even cooler.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, dude, I've taken up enough of your time, but I really appreciate you hopping on here with
Yeah,
me,
man.
and I'm sure we got off point at some point, but it was fine. It was good, and I think it's going to make for a good episode. So,
When I get asked questions, I'm always just wondering how do I not say something stupid, so I don't really even answer the question.
well, it's interesting because I think you and I are close to the same age, and
Yeah.
we have some similar background and likes as when it comes to the comics and toys and that kind of stuff. So that makes it easy. For me, it's always trying to keep it pure to the point of the podcast. So I'm
Right.
always trying to bring it back and like, why are we doing this again? Oh yeah, here we go. Try to connect those dots, and
Uh,
the dots to be connected, I think, are the fact that you guys are expert level branders with consistency and those kinds of things. And I don't even think you realize it. And I think it's cool. I think it's so cool. And
yeah.
to pull all that together, I think it's neat to bring it in and kind of combine those industries. So,
I'm just doing my best, like I said, not to embarrass myself,
well,
and making sure that I sign my name the same way every time. So if somebody gets it graded, they know that I did it.
right, right. But I really appreciate the time, and
Thank you, brother.
yeah, let me know how things go at the website. And if you have more changes, just shoot them over.
Yeah, let me know when that stuff comes in too.
Oh, yeah, I will. Yeah.
All right, brother.
I'm excited to see it. We'll see you later.
All right, thanks, man.
See ya. Have a good night.
You too.
Stay connected by following us on social media. There you'll find a steady flow of information on Cyberdogz, our customers, and the work that we do. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/CyberdogsMarketing, on Instagram at instagram.com/CyberdogsMarketing, or